Welcome back, and thanks for joining us for an adventure into another cosmic conquest. Today we will cover the tactical Battle of Caprica. The Battle of Capica, the Terran Ground Invasion. In the year 2565, the Terran Federation found itself embroiled in a fierce conflict with the Goota, an alien race known for its tenacity and strategic brilliance. This conflict kept the Terrans on high alert. Terran's massive armada secured and controlled the Goota Space and skies over Goota, and now it was time for the ground forces to finish the job. We have accounts from Marines who witnessed the battle. Please hear what they had to say. Goota and its abundant resources would determine the balance of power in the galaxy. Under the leadership of Admiral Mitch Allen, the Terran forces launched a bold campaign to capture the Goota capital of Caprica. This battle would test humanity's resilience, strategy, and indomitable spirit as they faced a foe whose brilliance was as daunting as it was admirable. The citizens of Goota are extremely afraid of the Terrans. They had heard about them and their destructive capabilities. They read the Terrans' history of how they killed billions of their own species. Chapter 1, The First Wave. On June 3, 2565, the desolate landscape of Goota seemed to stretch endlessly, its dunes shimmering under the harsh sun. The 23rd Terran Ground Forces, their hearts pounding with anticipation, began their advance. The air was thick with tension and dust as 25,000 soldiers marched forward, their armor glinting under the unforgiving light. Captain Aiden Hawke, his senses heightened, led the vanguard, his eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of the enemy, every step a heartbeat away from the unknown. The Terrans made landfall on the western shores of Goota, their drop ships kicking up clouds of sand as they unloaded troops and equipment. The initial resistance was minimal, but Captain Hawke, with his keen instincts, sensed that the Goota were biding their time. As night descended, the Terran forces established their camp, the eerie silence of the desert heightening their senses. Suddenly, a scout reported movement on the horizon. The Goota had dispatched a small force to test the Terran defenses. What followed was a heart-stopping skirmish with the Terrans emerging triumphant in the face of intense opposition. Sergeant Elena Torres, eyewitness account. Sergeant Elena Torres, a seasoned Marine, was part of the first wave of Terran forces landing on Goota. Her perspective highlights the initial chaos and determination of the troops.
Landing on Goota was like stepping into a nightmare. The heat, the dust, and the deafening noise of our dropships were overwhelming. As soon as we hit the ground, we were under fire. The Goota had prepared for us, and their initial resistance was fierce. I remember diving behind a rocky outcrop, bullets whizzing past my head. Our training kicked in immediately. We moved as one, covering each other, returning fire with precision. The adrenaline was unlike anything I'd ever felt before. We pushed forward, inch by inch, determined to secure our foothold. My comrades' resolve kept me going. We knew that every step we took was a step toward victory.
The results of the battle: after one day, the Terran forces had 100 injured and 14 dead, while the Gootas had over 300 injured and 500 dead. Chapter 2. The Push Forward. By June 4th, the 22nd Terran Ground Forces had joined the fray, bolstering the numbers to a formidable 50,000. The combined forces advanced with renewed vigor, their objective clear the capital city of Caprica. The 22nd TGF made a southern push alone with the Goota forces, while the 23rd went to the northern route. Forcing the Goots into a two-front battle, the Goota prepared a series of ambushes, using the terrain to their advantage. The first major engagement occurred near a rocky outcrop. The Goota had entrenched themselves, using the high ground to rain down fire upon the advancing Terrans. Captain Lucas Wolfe Thomas led the charge, his tactical brilliance turning the tide. With well-coordinated maneuvers, the Terrans outflanked the Goota, forcing them to retreat once more. Another eyewitness account: Corporal Jake Reynolds. Corporal Jake Reynolds, a member of Captain Hawk's unit, provided an account of the strategic maneuvers and intense combat during the push toward Capica.
Captain Hawk was a force of nature. He led us with such intensity and focus that it was impossible not to be inspired. We encountered heavy resistance as we advanced. The Goota had set up ambushes, using the terrain to their advantage. I remember one engagement near a rocky outcrop where we were pinned down by sniper fire. Hawk coordinated a flanking maneuver that turned the tide. We moved like a well-oiled machine, clearing the enemy positions one by one. The fighting was brutal, but our tactics and training gave us the edge. Every victory, no matter how small, boosted our morale and pushed us closer to Caprica.
Results from the battle: after one day, the Terran forces had 300 injured and 25 killed, while the Gootas had over 432 injured and 1,000 killed. Chapter 3: The Turning Point. On June 4th, Colonel Bacton led 25,000 Terran 10th Marine forces to land off the shore. Equipped with advanced amphibious vehicles and heavy artillery, they provided much-needed support to push the Goota back. The 10th Marines and Special Operations Forces advanced through the southern route into the capital. Major Samuel Hawk Mitchell led the Marine forces with unmatched ferocity. His strategic acumen and unyielding determination inspired the troops. The Goota, realizing they were outmatched, began a full retreat. The Terrans pursued relentlessly, giving the aliens no respite. The 22nd and 23rd TGF rejoined their lines and made an eastern push toward the Goota capital, where they still faced heavy fighting from the Gootas. Another eyewitness account: 3 Private Lisa Nguyen. Private Lisa Nguyen, part of Major Mitchell's Marine forces, shared her experiences during the amphibious assault that marked a turning point in the battle.
We knew we were going to be the game changer. Our vehicles and artillery hit the shores with overwhelming force. Major Mitchell led us with such ferocity that it was hard not to feel invincible. The Goota were waiting for us, but they didn't expect the sheer scale of our assault. I was part of a unit tasked with destroying a heavily fortified bunker. The firefight was intense, with bullets, explosions, and shouts filling the air. Despite the chaos, we moved with purpose. Mitchell's clear and commanding voice came over the comms, directing our every move. When we finally breached the bunker, the sense of triumph was indescribable. We knew we were making history.
The amphibious Marines faced no resistance and were at full speed to the Capica to take up positions in the southern part of the capital. The Goota forces conceded the shorelines and fell back to their capital. Chapter 4: The Final Assault. On June 6th, another 25,000 2nd Terran airborne forces landed deep within Goota territory. By landing north of the capital city, they aimed to secure strategic points and cut off any potential escape routes for the Goota. The airborne troops, trained for rapid deployment and high-intensity combat, executed their mission with precision. Captain Thomas coordinated the ground assault with the airborne forces, ensuring a seamless operation. By June 7th, the 25,000 airborne troops had crossed into Goota, their presence striking fear into the hearts of the alien defenders. The Terrans faced very little resistance and secured the north of. Chapter 5: The Siege of Capica. On June 10th, the Terran forces the city was a maze of narrow streets and towering buildings, perfect for guerrilla warfare. The Goota fought with desperation, knowing this was their last chance to repel the invaders. The Terrans advanced methodically, clearing each sector with precision. Captain Hawk and Major Mitchell led their respective units. Their coordination was impeccable. The battle raged for hours, with each side giving no quarter. Explosions rocked the city, and the sound of gunfire echoed through the streets. Eyewitness account: 4 Lance Corporal David Hayes. Lance Corporal David Hayes, from the 2nd Terran Airborne Forces, recounted the final assault on Capica and the subsequent fall of the city.
We were dropping into enemy territory, which is always a rush, but this time it was different. We knew this was the final push. The city of Capica loomed ahead, heavily fortified and bristling with defenses. Our mission was to secure key points and cut off escape routes. The fighting was fierce, with every block and building turning into a battlefield. The Goota were desperate, and their resistance was intense. But we had the advantage of surprise and superior tactics. As we breached the inner defenses, the tide began to turn. The Goota started to surrender, realizing their defeat was inevitable. The sight of our flag being raised over the city center was a moment of pure victory. We had done it. Caprica was ours, with it, the hope of lasting peace.
Chapter 6, The Fall of Capica. The decisive moment came on June 10th. The Terran forces, having breached the inner defenses, poured into the city center. The Goota, realizing the futility of further resistance, began to surrender. The Terrans showed no mercy to those who continued to fight, but those who laid down their arms were spared. Admiral Allen arrived in Caprica to oversee the final operations. The city, once a symbol of Goota pride, now lay in ruins. The streets were littered with debris, and the air was thick with smoke. The battle had been won, but the cost was high. But Chose Allen called for a full ceasefire, and for all Terran troops to leave the capital and return to their posts around the city. The Goota offered their unconditional surrender. The Terrans accepted. The Gootas took the Terrans in good faith, understanding that the Terrans could have bombarded the city and planets from space but chose to come by land. The war officially ended on June 14th, 2565. The Terrans only wanted peace, and to remove this evil and dishonest government in control. Chapter 7, Victory and the Aftermath. After the fall of Capica, the days were spent securing the city and tending to the wounded. The Terrans established a provisional government in an effort to restore order and rebuild the city. The Goota, now under Terran's control, looked forward to a future of freedom and democracy. The war officially ended on June 14, 2565. Captain Samuel Hayes, the chief medical officer, worked tirelessly to treat both Terran and Goota wounded. More Terran doctors joined forces with Goota doctors to provide excellent health care to the Goota population. The Terrans' dedication to saving lives, regardless of allegiance, earned them respect from the Goota people. The alien civilians gradually relaxed and no longer feared the Terrans as they saw their lives changing for the better. The Terrans respected many Goota ways and did not significantly change their day-to-day lives. The Goota's lives remained fairly consistent. While the Goota people continued to live as they always had, there were some changes in their government leadership. As time passed, the alien people felt more liberated, and their lives improved significantly. Eventually, the Gootas became members of the Terran Earth Alliance. The victory at Capica marked a turning point in the Terran-Goota conflict. With their capital in Terran's hands, the Goota were forced to negotiate. Peace talks began and a fragile truce was established. The leadership of the Terran Earth Alliance was instrumental in these negotiations, and their understanding of the Goota culture proved invaluable. Through their efforts, a new era of cooperation and understanding began to take shape. The Goota were allowed to keep all their wealth, resources, and traditions. The two worlds honored their dead and vowed peace throughout the galaxy. Epilogue: Legacy of the Battle. The Battle of Capica became a symbol of Terran resilience and determination. The soldiers' sacrifices and the leadership of Admiral Allen, Captain Hawk, Major Mitchell, and Captain Thomas were remembered as pivotal in securing peace. As the Terrans and Goota worked together to rebuild, a new chapter in their history began. The lessons learned from the conflict forged a bond between the two species, united in their quest for a better future. In the end, the Battle of Caprica was not just a victory for the Terrans, but a triumph of unity and hope for both the Terrans and Goota people.